Star Wars, once considered to be the greatest and most valuable and frankly most indestructible intellectual property in Hollywood franchise history, has now perhaps been reduced to an ash heap. A lot of the things that we predicted in the last several months that would happen with the latest entry in the Lucasfilm saga, Andor on Disney Plus, now seems to have come true, thanks to brand new numbers just released from Nielsen covering the premiere week of Andor itself. And now, let us sit upon the ground and tell the sad stories of the deaths of kings.
Renegade Online.
Well, welcome back, folks. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you were like one of the many not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment, hit that little red subscribe button and turn it gray. Hit that notification bell, hit that like button, share this sucker out on the social media, and of course, please do leave a comment below the video with your thoughts before you head out the door today. And I have a feeling that a lot of you are going to have a lot of thoughts on this one. This is something that was a bit of an unfortunate correct prediction for the show Andor on Disney Plus, starring Diego Luna, an actor that I have a tremendous amount of respect for. The first time I saw Diego Luna was in Narcos, Mexico, a fantastic show on Netflix. The whole Narcos series is, as a matter of fact, and of course during Rogue One. And I was really looking forward to seeing him in this show, even though I have not had Disney Plus for several months. And we're not doing a review of Andor. And there's a lot of people out there that like Andor. And I'm glad that there are a lot of people out there that seem to like Andor. The problem is there's simply not enough of you anymore. And that's the conversation here today, because this could be the bellwether moment to when something that Disney structured specifically to smash away at the Nielsen charts, as they did with Obi-Wan Kenobi. We saw the roll-off from that. We saw a very bad performance with Book of Boba Fett when it came to ratings, especially when you consider this is part of the Star Wars franchise. This should be the biggest thing on television, or one of the very biggest things on television, and it's barely registering. And the Nielsen numbers bear it out. But before we get to the Nielsen numbers, let's talk about some of the other things that had us clued in as to what was going on. We knew for the last several weeks that word of mouth about Andor, though positive, was very few and far between. It wasn't really registering out there in the Google Trends or Google algorithms. There did not seem to be a whole lot of discussion or dialogue. Twitter hashtags were out there, but they were way down the list. They were well behind House of the Dragon, even the Rings of Power, and even some more recent Netflix shows like Cobra Kai, which was huge. And of course, the latest entry that's a big hit for Netflix, which is Dahmer. But what's come down since Disney Plus, apart from The Mandalorian, really has been lackluster. They look more like the Marvel shows on Disney Plus than anything, which is to also say that they are mediocre generally at best. But again, a lot of people have given a lot of praise for Andor, but it's just not helping. And why is that? It's because Lucasfilm and people like Kathleen Kennedy and the Pablo Hidalgos of the world have spent years now since Disney bought the intellectual property, denigrating the old fan base, saying that we're not going to cater to the 40 and 50 some odd year old white men out there, the old fan base, quote unquote, their imagination of what the old fan base was. We're going to cater to a new audience. So they basically neglected all of the billions of dollars worth of fandom that was out there, thinking that it was one thing when it was really something else. See, that fandom is probably more diverse than any fandom that has ever been on Earth. People from all different backgrounds, from different skin colors, people that were men, people that were women. It didn't matter. Star Wars had a huge fan following because it was good storytelling. It was the hero's journey. And it was something that everybody could relate to, no matter what they looked like versus the actors on the screen. But in came Disney Lucasfilm and decided none of that mattered anymore, and that only modern politics injected into this for a new audience could be something to the key of the future, could be something that would lead them to riches. Well, of course, we all know what happened. Following the first film, we saw box office declines that were incredibly sharp, and then into the gutter, suffering major losses on films like Solo that Lucasfilm still to this day deludes itself, believing, at least publicly, that the only reason that that movie lost as much as it did and failed as it did at the box office was because they tried to replace Harrison Ford as the titular character. Well, of course, that's just hot nonsense. To be clear, Solo was punished for the temerity of making a film like The Last Jedi, which was a slap in the face to fans, as was The Rise of Palpatine. And I'm sorry, I still refuse to call it The Rise of Skywalker because there was no Skywalker in that film so far as I could tell. And if you don't believe me on how bad Andor looked and how much that other streaming companies kind of saw the writing on the wall as well, you might have caught our recent live stream from just a few days ago where we covered the Netflix earnings call. And guess what happened during that call? In the middle of its public report, they brought up an actual Google Trends chart to show just how powerful the Netflix brand is, showing that Rings of Power and House of the Dragon down there at the bottom were scoring at or below a 25 mark on Google Trends. And as soon as Dahmer released, it went through the roof and buried both of those shows. Now, of note, you can also see how much higher House of the Dragon's interest in Google searches is than the Rings of Power. But in case you might have missed it, and you could be forgiven for doing so, right there where Dahmer released, right there around September 21st, as a matter of fact, there was another show that released that absolutely should have been at least a thought in this Google chart. It should have been a thought on fans' minds, and fans should have been searching for it. You see nothing in the way of Andor, which means that Netflix couldn't even be bothered to bring up the biggest new release from their largest streaming competitor, Disney+. Why? Because frankly, it didn't even hit the bottom end of the Google Trend charts, and nothing has changed since then. And it just goes from bad to worse on the brand new Nielsen streaming updates for the week of September 19th through the week of September 25th, which, as a reminder, Andor was released on September 21st, which was a Wednesday, meaning that Andor, unlike the Friday releases of Netflix and Amazon Prime, had 5 full days. 5 full days to register and work its way up this streaming chart based on millions of minutes watched. It's not even in the top 10 overall streaming programming for that week. Cobra Kai was still hanging in after almost 3 weeks onto the number 2 spot. Dahmer came in out of the gate with 3.6 billion watch minutes, which was released on a Friday that week. Now, granted, it had 10 episodes, and that amounted to almost 10 hours of available watch time. But even if we back that down to Andor's 2 hours of available watch time that came out in that same week and came out 2 full days earlier in that 7-week cycle, the numbers still aren't even close. To find Andor, we have to go to only original programming. And to find it there, you have to go all the way down to the number 6 spot. And there Andor is, with 3 episodes totaling 120 some odd minutes of available watch time, pulled in 624 million minutes of viewing. That means if we assume that everybody who turned on Andor watched the available watch time to completion, meaning all 3 episodes from start to finish, then that means that somewhere only little north of 5 million people watched the premiere of Andor on Disney+, which is atrocious. That is less than half that of Rings of Power. That is about a third of that of the House of the Dragon. And if we go, and that's just over the first night for those other 2 shows. If we extrapolate the numbers out for House of the Dragon, for example, over the course of its first 5 days, just in the US alone, which Nielsen tracks, if you recall, HBO said that somewhere around 25 plus million watched the premiere of House of the Dragon, the first episode, over the first 5 days. It was almost 30 million by the time they got to the second episode. And of course, that included streaming, that included the linear delivery through regular HBO, and all kind of other ways like on demand or YouTube TV or things like that that don't otherwise necessarily get picked up and tracked except by somebody like HBO itself. And again, Andor only managed to pick up about 1/5 to 1/6 of the audience of House of the Dragon in that case. But wait, there's more. As we remember, a lot of people who watched the premiere of Andor said that the first couple of episodes were very boring and that things didn't start really picking up till the 3rd and even the 4th episode that wasn't even out this week. So how many of these views, how many of this watch time were people that might have watched 1 or 2 episodes and then dropped off, meaning that how much of that 645 million minutes of watch time is heavily front-loaded towards the first episode or 2? How many people actually watch the 3rd episode? That's the real question. And next week's numbers from Nielsen, when episode 4 comes into play, is going to be interesting. Because if the trend continues, we're going to see Andor having started out with very weak numbers on the Nielsen charts, and it's only going to get precipitously worse from here. As an example, let's go back and look at that chart one more time and see if you notice something missing. Anybody see She-Hulk on there? Nope. Okay. She-Hulk has completely fallen out of the top 10 by this point on this Nielsen streaming chart. Nobody cares about this show. Remember all those little fun articles from junk websites like Whip Media that everybody got into a frenzy about? As I told you before, it's garbage. It doesn't mean anything. The Nielsen numbers bear it out. By the way, if you want more information on what happened with that, make sure you stay tuned because my buddy WDW PRO at thatparkplace.com is going to have an article coming out about that very thing with She-Hulk very, very soon. And with 3 episodes totaling just about 2 hours of content, a little over 2 hours of available watch time for that content, as a matter of fact, there's no reason whatsoever that Andor should not have been at or above the 1 billion minutes watched mark. That is something that is easily done by Netflix almost every Friday in its sleep with a new movie release that's also around 90 to 120 minutes. Take a look again at these terrible numbers for Andor, 624 million watch minutes, and soak it in, Disney, because you did this. Disney's animosity towards fans is exactly what they received back. And even worse, they've received back a wealth of apathy from the Star Wars fandom. They just don't care anymore. You see, it doesn't matter how good Andor is. And again, I understand a lot of people like the show and think it's wonderful and one of the best Star Wars shows that they have made to this point. And that's great. And I'm happy that those fans are enjoying it. I'm not here to take that away from you. I'm strictly here looking at the business side of things. I'm looking at the numbers and I'm reading the tea leaves, and they're just flat bad for Star Wars right now. When they can't even get a big show like this that they probably spent well north of $100 million to create to barely move the needle. It is one of the worst premieres ever, especially when you factor in how much watch time they released. Obi-Wan Kenobi released with 2 episodes totaling 90 minutes. This was 120 minutes with 3 episodes. Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian typically released with 1 episode, and those episodes were often somewhere around 45 minutes. And they ran up better numbers than 3 episodes of Andor. You're dead, Star Wars. Go home. Till next time, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and do leave a comment with your thoughts below before you check out the door today. Take care.